Humans are not inherently wired for religious belief, a new study claims. While modern rhetoric suggests that atheism is an idea of today's world, a professor from the University of Cambridge argues that it is an ancient way of thought, which was later squashed by imperial forces. Disbelief in God, or gods, stretches back to the polytheistic civilizations of ancient Greece and pre-Christian Rome, and in these ancient societies, atheism likely thrived. A new book called Battling the Gods by Tim Whitmarsh, professor of Greek culture and a fellow of St. John's College, University of Cambridge, explains that atheism has been left out of much of written history. This has led current debates between atheists and believers to rest upon two assumptions, the researcher explains. One is that atheism is a modern mindset, and the other is the idea of religious universalism, which suggests that religious belief is a default setting for humans. Both of these ideas, the researcher says, are incorrect. Instead, Whitmarsh argues that atheism has always been present. The researcher says disbelief can be traced back to ancient societies, from atheistic writings of Xenophanes of Colophon, c. 570-475 BCE, to Plato's 4th century BCE writings. Non-believers of the time, Plato said, were not the first to have had this view about the gods. Instead of atheism emerging as a modern way of thought, Whitmarsh suggests it is as old as the hills, and was even considered normal among the polytheistic societies of Greece and pre-Christian Rome. We tend to see atheism as an idea that has only recently emerged in secular Western societies, Whitmarsh said. The rhetoric used to describe it is hypermodern. In fact, early societies were far more capable than many since of containing atheism within the spectrum of what they considered normal. Rather than making judgments based on scientific reason, these early atheists were making what seemed to be universal objections about the paradoxical nature of religion, the fact that it asks you to accept things that aren't intuitively there in your world. The fact that this was happening thousands of years ago suggests that forms of disbelief can exist in all cultures, and probably always have. Polytheism in ancient Greece allowed atheism to flourish, as there was no unified religious text among the individual cultures of more than 1,000 city-states. While some people would have thought atheism a mistaken viewpoint, the researcher explains that there were no priests or clergy dictating people's lives, so disbelief was not considered to be morally wrong. Many early thinkers harnessed disbelief in the gods, and the Epicureans argued against predestination and the overarching control of the gods. Only on occasion were people, like Socrates, actively persecuted for this, Whitmarsh says. And many of the fundamental beliefs of atheism have persisted today. Believers talk about atheism as if it's a pathology of a particularly odd phase of modern Western culture that will pass, but if you ask someone to think hard, clearly people also thought this way in antiquity. The change came dramatically after Rome adopted Christianity in the 4th century CE. When imperial forces demanded societies accepted one true God, atheism was largely extinguished, as deviation from religious belief was no longer tolerated. Since the decline of polytheism, the researcher says atheism likely hasn't flourished as well in most subsequent civilizations.